welcome back to PH Chalk Up. I'm your host Manny, and today we have Josie. Hi, Josie. How are we doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. If you just give us a little background on who you are, what you do, and how you got to the position you are.
Totally, of course. So I grew up playing a lot of soccer. I loved all sports. I was just fairly active as a kid in general. I loved running around, doing all that stuff. My dad was really invested in my soccer, and that he was the first to get me into strength training and conditioning and speed training and all that stuff around 12 or 13 years old. I wasn't super into all that training stuff at first. I really just wanted to play. But, I did all of it, learned all the basics. Towards the end of high school, my junior year, I started getting really burnt out of it. That's when the college scouts started looking, and it was a lot of pressure, and it didn't really feel fun for me anymore. So I quit. That was when I probably got in the worst shape of my life. Not that I gained a bunch of weight or anything like that, but I got a glimpse at what starts happening when you live a sedentary lifestyle. I remember all of my friends and stuff went to just run a 5K for fun, and they were all making jokes that I was going to kill all of them because I was known as the sporty athletic one, and I was being humble about it, but was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna win this for sure. And I remember being so surprised when I did the worst of them all, was huffing and puffing at the end. And that was the first time I realized, oh, I'm not naturally, innately athletic and fast and talented like I thought. This is all because this is the way I've been living now. About middle of my senior year, I kind of had a panic moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to play soccer again. So I started reaching out to all these coaches, anyone I could, to play soccer in college. Eventually, I got a chance to walk onto the team of the college I was going to. And all summer, I went all out to get into shape for that. And that was the first time I trained completely on my own and didn't realize how experimental it was for myself. For me to lay out a 12-week plan to go from completely out of shape to a D1 athlete ready was a really big feat, and I didn't really know what to expect from it. But at the end of it, when I officially walked onto the team, I made it to the team, and I was just about middle of the pack, strength training and endurance-wise. It really did open my eyes to how drastically training could affect my ability and performance, which sounds really silly, but before that point, I was really just a stupid kid who didn't give a crap about training, wanted to play soccer. College was when I sort of started falling more in love with the weight room. On the team, I was below average at best on the field. And I started seeing more and more how what I did in the weight room drastically improved my performance on the field. So that's when I started becoming much more type A about my training. I really liked it also because I could have a fun strategy with all the different variables, and it felt like a fun game that I would play. And it was interesting. I sort of had this turning point because I could tell a lot of the girls on my team were insanely passionate about soccer in a way that I never was and knew I never would be. But on the contrary, I started becoming more and more interested in the work that was done on the field. Towards the end of college, I got this gut health issue, which I think everybody has had at some point. Everyone's like, yesing. But it did significantly affect me. I was really nauseous all the time. I started losing a lot of weight. Doctors didn't have an answer for me. And I didn't want to give up training the way I was because I had fallen in love with it. So it took me about 6 months to a year for me to finally be like, okay, this is not working for me. I can't go on this way. And from there, I decided that I would totally upheave my current lifestyle. I changed my diet. I took a huge step back from training, less volume, less intensity, but still moving with a purpose. It was like more of a functional strength training type of style. And that was really significant for me because I think there's a lot of people out there, especially former college athletes, that know how to train and get in wicked good shape, but only in one type of way where they only know how to go from 0 to 60 and there's no in between. So dealing with a chronic illness like that but being able to adapt my training style was huge because I could see how training didn't only affect my performance on the field, but could also be a tool to improve my daily living situation. Post-college was when I became a personal trainer. I didn't know if it was right for me at the time. I just knew I wanted to keep learning and be in that environment as much as possible. I did end up falling in love with that more than I could have imagined. And fast forward to today, I'm still training full-time, online and in person. I consider myself a performance coach, but I've worked with pretty much every demographic under the sun. I'm a corrective exercise specialist and post-natal certified. And I currently have a 6-month-old. And the previous year being pregnant was definitely a similar experience to the gut health issue where I wasn't at all prepared for what was to come and what I had to do, but very much learned more about my body and fitness through that process and definitely hated every second of it. But looking back, it was really good for me and really cool that I was able to take so much from that. So yeah, every experience I've had, just learned a new lesson. It really does make me appreciate the health and fitness industry, mostly because I realize it's not just for athletes; it's for everyone universally, regardless if you're a new mom, athlete, an 85-year-old guy. It really just is so important, and I feel like the general population doesn't see that, and that's what makes me especially super passionate about it.
100%. Obviously, you've had different peaks and valleys with your performance. Can you take us back to your first program and how that was sort of like getting ready to then go and walk onto D1 program?
Oh, my first uh, when I
Your
wrote
first
that
experience
first
of the
program.
programs? Yeah.
Oh yeah, so yeah, looking back at the time, I thought it was a great program. Looking back, I am like, oh, I would have written that so differently. I think the biggest part of that for me, why I was able to get in good shape, was because I was so uh, determined. So I like pushed myself harder than ever with sprints and intervals. But it was like 4 days interval training, one long run day, one strength training day. Um, I won't get into the nitty
So you
gritty of
really
it. I
had
don't
the
know if I can
different,
remember it, but
yeah,
it was a good base for me at the time.
yeah. So you had a little bit of speed, endurance, and then strength to
Yeah,
back
yeah,
up what you were doing. Nice.
yeah, yeah.
I'm always fascinated with coaches' first programs because everyone's is terrible, terrible. Like I remember my first one, and I'm just like, oh.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it's so funny. I think it's everybody's though. I think even non-trainers have written themselves like a little workout, and they're like, "This is great." And then the more and more you learn, the more you're,
yeah, 100%.
yeah, it's not the best.
Um, can you sort of go through like the gut issues and how you sort of programmed around it and how you found it easier to go back to the gym, perform at your best?
Yeah, so at the time I had been lifting super heavy, been running super long runs, 10 miles, like 20 minutes of interval sprints on the Woodway. So I was just
Mm,
very high volume, very high intensity, and I loved being in that shape. And it really was doing what I was currently doing, but taking a step back. I think I um, took out like the interval sprints. I did like a lot lighter cardio, more so like incline walking. I incorporated more functional things to gain my strength back. I had lost a lot of muscle, and pushing myself with weight that I couldn't previously do, that I could previously do, but was just barely making, almost injuring myself, wasn't worth it.
mm.
Um, so yeah, just focusing more so on form, um, and more unilateral work. Um, yeah,
So just mainly focusing on that movement efficiency and how to correct your exercises.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm guessing there's a lag in the video.
yeah, yeah. There's a little lag.
Um, if you, what were the lessons that you've sort of learned through all these going back and forwards with either like your health issue coming out of sports and then pregnancy? What have been some of the learning processes that you've felt through it?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that you have to be able to be flexible and adapt your training plan. I think across the board, even if you have written the best training plan there is, something's going to change. You're going to get a little injured. Something's going to be weaker or lag behind. You're not going to be progressing as well in a certain aspect as you are in a different aspect. So I think being flexible and adapting your program and training plan throughout the process is the biggest lesson, because a lot of times we write it down, we're like, this is perfect, and we feel as if we need to stick to our plan exactly. And I'd say 99% of the time, doesn't matter who you are, you're going to have to change that plan.
100%. It's funny because like at this point, all coaches talk about periodization and how much it actually changes. Like you can write out
Yeah.
this best case scenario and the best program ever, but something is going to go wrong at some point. So, what strategies do you put in place when something does go wrong and then you have to adapt it to something else?
I don't know about strategies. I guess I constantly do assess myself while I'm working out, and I make sure that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And if not, I'll constantly rewrite and go back. And for me, myself and my clients included, um, I think every workout I think of as like a mini assessment where I
Mm.
am seeing where I'm at and how I can write the next week to be better and build off of where I'm at currently.
100%. With the demographic that you have, what are some of the sort of considerations that you have to look into, just like depending on who you have on the gym floor?
So yeah, at the time being, I have mostly general pop, and for that, I'm really thinking about aging a lot. And I think I don't like to use that word because they'll get offended. Like I'm not that old, but I'm always thinking about aging and just more of a functional mindset where. I think a lot of my clients are confused why they need to be practicing jumping or landing, or I do a lot of things that maybe athletes would, you'd think about athletes doing. But I think performance across the board is really important for the general population because as we age, we really lose those abilities, that athletic ability. And so I'm constantly looking at like just injury prevention in that way, ankles, hips, lateral movement. Imbalances in the body, interior, posterior, pelvic tilt. Um, but I'd say it's not too different than what you would look for in an
Mm.
athlete. It's just more of a modified version of it.
Yeah, and I think this is something that everyone should do is train like an athlete.
Yeah.
Like you're obviously not going to do the same as an athlete would, but like incorporating jumps, incorporating some speed work, some movement in ways that would compromise your body, not in a bad way, but like overextending and sort of just putting yourself in these positions to gain these adaptations. Like you're saying, aging population, everyone's aging.
Yeah.
Everyone's going
Oh,
to
yeah.
lose some type of movement at some point, but we can mitigate that by simply keep moving the way that we've always moved. And it seems silly to say as well because like when like and I think I've told you this story, but my granny's 96 and I still get her to jump.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
she does like a little Michael Jackson, but she's still using that reactiveness that she used to have. And I think losing these is what detriments your lifestyle.
Oh, yeah. I think the most well rounded you can be, the
Mm.
better. I think I've even trained bodybuilders before who have been like, what can this like little girl like help me with? And we've done a ton of unilateral work and lots of like uh, more power based movement, things that they haven't done quite as much of. And everybody's weak in something. You just find that thing that you're not doing. And the more well rounded you could be, the better functional human being you can be.
I agree. And the thing is, like, longevity is the goal for everyone. Like, the longer your body stays intact, the longer life and the healthier life you have.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
why not just like keep pushing these little boundaries within yourself?
Yeah.
And you're right, like, everyone has something that is weaker or there's limitations somewhere. But the ability to push also gives you that mindset of, like, okay, I'm uncomfortable, but this is going to help later on.
Oh yeah, I've talked to my parents before about training them, and they told me they're like, "Yeah, but we don't like doing step ups." And I was like, "Yeah, I know you don't like doing step ups, but if you avoid those now, while you can still do them, as you in 10 years from now, you're not going to be able to get up the stairs at all. You're going to lose that ability completely. So yeah, even though you don't like it now, you have to have that mindset where is this going to head towards at the end of the day? Like you have to be able to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
100%. Um, with in terms to the sort of postpartum qualifications that you have and you work with, and we've previously spoken this, what's the process that you go through from like first trimester all the way to the third trimester?
Yeah. So the first thing I say, which I've actually haven't been in the position, unfortunately, for this, but I always say that the best thing you can do is be working out and be in a good routine, fitness wise, before you get pregnant. I think it is a lot harder. to start working out in the first trimester. Not that you shouldn't or you can't, but um, the first trimester definitely is where your willpower, motivation, energy is at its lowest. So if you have a really good base of strength and routine before getting pregnant, that is the best. Um, with all my clients, they've come, which is a majority of women who get pregnant and say, "Oh, okay, now it's time. I should be getting in
Mm.
shape," which isn't wrong. I think every time's a good time to start, but yeah, that's been my experience with the first trimester. Like I said, energy super low, motivation super low. How I start my first trimester clients is usually just getting them moving as much as possible with real low intensity, low volume. We usually do like a lot of body weight work. Try to get them through the motions. We'll do like, if we do a barbell squat, we'll usually just use the barbell, do a box squat. A lot of them have headaches, nausea setting in, but I just want to keep their body used to the movement. So when they go into the second trimester and their energy does come back, their body's not completely atrophied at that point. But yeah, if, in general, though, the first trimester, nothing is contradicted. So you're totally allowed to, if you feel great, all your core exercises, you can still lift heavy. I know I have heard of women that have been training through their first trimester completely fine. So I don't want that to deter anybody who is feeling great. You're totally welcome to do whatever you need. Through the second trimester is when people start feeling better. This is the most normal trimester, which is people are surprised by, especially those who haven't been pregnant before. Um, the only thing I'd say with the second trimester is that you start to have to look out for coning and doming in the core when you're doing core
Mm.
exercises. This is when you normally have to look at when you're going to stop doing sit-ups, stop doing crunching, Russian twists. You can in the beginning of it, but it's different for everybody when that starts. So you just have to keep an eye out on it. Definitely towards the end of the second trimester.
Can you explain what Conan endowment looks like and how
Yeah.
that comes about?
So I think everybody across the board kind of knows when, let's say you're doing a hollow hold, you kind of see that like bulge in your stomach, the intra abdominal pressure kind of comes out. With pregnant women, especially, instead of that bulge, you'll see a little triangle shape. And it's really just the rectus abdominis, like can't handle the pressure, and there's a separation that's happening right at the top. Um, so yeah, that's what it looks like, and you'll see and feel it. It's not necessarily uncomfortable. So like even it's a common in the CrossFit world for women to be like, "Oh, it's fine. I'm going to keep going," and you shouldn't because it's going to cause more damage down the road.
Yeah, I've
So
got my thoughts and feelings about CrossFit.
yeah, it's a lot of opinions. But that's the biggest thing I look out for. I've known women to PR in their second trimester. Also, some people still have their energy low. In general, it's funny because I know a big myth is don't lift more than 50 pounds in your
Mm.
pregnancy, um, which is silly. I'd say from my personal experience, not that this isn't coming from anything, but I've just seen that women can generally in the second trimester, third trimester, lift 50 to 75% of their pre-pregnancy max.
Wow.
So not you shouldn't be going crazy hard, but that's what kind of feels good for most women. For example, I don't know if we we just so we didn't like CrossFit, but Tia Claire Toomey, who is an
Mm.
Australian CrossFitter, she was like on her due date doing like handstand push-ups and heavy cleans and all this stuff, which looked crazy. And the only reason she was able to do that because she's so strong pre-pregnancy that really is nothing to her at this point.
Mhm.
That is definitely 50 to 75% of her pre-pregnancy max. Um, but
Like,
then,
I'm not saying that we should not do anything CrossFit related. Like, CrossFit
oh
is
yeah,
good for certain things. Why I have issues is non-professional gyms teaching Olympic lifts and these extreme, difficult. lifting styles under the time constraints and pressures to people who perhaps haven't lifted a day in their life and they join a CrossFit gym and the first thing they do is cleans and snatches.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree.
That's wild to
Yeah,
me,
no,
my
it is.
opinion.
Yeah, I'm bittersweet about it only because I feel like the culture of CrossFit has done a lot of good for the
Agree.
fitness world and for women lifting, and that's yeah where I'm bittersweet about it.
Agree. When I was coaching at UW, we had to put a presentation together on a topic that we don't necessarily agree with, but we have to be on its side. I chose CrossFit and the community aspect of CrossFit and like how it brings people in and it sort of creates these bonds within people and then they start coming because they enjoy that camaraderie. Like that's amazing. And I
Yeah.
really like CrossFit because of that. But I'm a very technical guy and I like to make sure that everyone's like safe throughout.
Oh yeah.
That's where I have an
Oh,
issue with.
yeah. Very difficult. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Um, oh, so going back, uh, second trimester core, and then third trimester is when you just start getting very uncomfortable, um, very large. Normally with this, you keep doing the same things we have. I had been programming, but I just modify certain things. Like you can no longer squat, split squat. Usually I go into a sumo stance deadlift, sumo stance squat with chest pressing, usually go into an incline bench just because it's so hard to get up without crunching, or you need someone to help you up at least um, instead of like rolling off the bench.
Mm,
So incline bench is the best, but normally, naturally, your volume and intensity is going to go down. I wouldn't necessarily like write in that it has to go down, but you're not going to feel your best and be able to lift like you had been previously.
100%. And like, so for people who haven't seen your Instagram, which I will give a quick shout out to because this is kind of how I found you. And I love some of the videos that you have on because although you've just had a baby, you're doing some really extreme sort of lifts. Was there stuff on the screen or not?
It's white right now. Let me see.
But yeah, so you don't train like a Gen Pop person straight from having a baby. Can you sort of go through the process that you went through, sort of with the core separation? How did you implement a way to fix that, and what have been the steps that you've taken to do some of the movements that you do now?
Yes. So initially, I really just did going back to very basic core bird dogs. I call it a box hold, where you're lying flat on your back. You really press that low back into the ground, engage the core without creating that bulge. You don't want to create that abdominal pressure. Um, and you just kind of hold that there for 30 to 60 seconds. If you want to progress it, then you put those legs up in the air, knees right over top of the hips, shins parallel with the ground. I also do just like a quadruped, same exact thing where you kind of engage the core, tuck the pelvis in, and then relax it. You hold that for 30 seconds to 60 seconds. That was the first, like I'd say, 4 to 8 weeks where I really didn't do anything more than that core wise. It was a very interesting experience for me because I do remember around the 6 week mark going to do a broad jump and
Mm,
thinking like, oh, my legs are super strong. This is going to be great. And I felt my core totally unstable. I didn't realize at the time how unstable it was until I tried to do that broad jump, um, which makes sense because the pregnancy is as if like having a cast on your core for 9 months. So it really did have to build that up super slow and take it easy and make sure that everything was working properly before I like tried to do a heavy barbell squat. But it was definitely a
mm.
slow progression. I did just the barbell for a while and got I'm still going heavier and heavier each time and yeah.
How have you found that process? Like, so from sort of first trimester where you were a little bit fatigued and you had low energy to then sort of being able to go through that all those changes and still keep lifting?
It was definitely really hard. I'm somebody who's, yeah, motivation to lift is normally very high. I don't have a problem, but yeah, it was definitely very difficult during the entire pregnancy. I wasn't very much in the mood, but I knew that the more I kept lifting and strength training, the easier my recovery was going to be uh, thereafter. And it definitely did help significantly postpartum. I don't know what I would have done if I had lost that strength during pregnancy.
What's your biggest advice for women who are currently pregnant and wanting to stay as active as they were beforehand?
Biggest advice would be to, I wouldn't even compare to your beforehand. I think I would say training at least 2 times a week is great if you're pregnant. For like 45 minutes, you don't have to go super heavy or super intense. Just very basic lifts. Make sure you're squatting, hinging. Um, and then also the biggest thing I'd say walks. I tried to walk throughout my entire pregnancy. Um, I was a runner before that. I didn't attempt to run during my pregnancy at all. I didn't feel like it, but I didn't realize how hard walking was going to get towards the end. And just maintaining that ability to walk around the block a few times was super helpful and super important.
I think as well that a good way to think about it is walking with like a weighted vest. Obviously, it's not the
Oh
exact
yeah.
same, but
Oh yeah.
weight wise, it's currently that constant pressure on you as you take a step.
Yeah. And it definitely was like even my hips were killing me by the second trimester. And that was something that was really important for that was, for example, like our what we talked about adapting and changing the plan. At the beginning of my pregnancy, I was like, I just want to maintain for as long as
Mm.
possible, lifting as heavy as I have been. So I was doing squats, hinging, and then I realized my hips were just absolutely killing me, and I had to take a step back in the plan and work a lot more hip and corrective exercises for that because of that pressure that was coming down on my hips. And that was the same as walking. It wasn't even just the weight, it was just the way my hips were now moving that
Mm.
was hurting me. So yeah, you have to just be very flexible, taking in all these different variables and changing the plan as you go.
What are the biggest differences for you, like having done the qualification to actually experiencing the pregnancy? How have the programming sort of variables changed?
The biggest one has been the first trimester. I feel bad for not fully comprehending how exhausted you are the first trimester because what they teach you when you get certified is that you have no contradictions. You can do whatever you want your first trimester. So I would always get my clients right into just functional, introductory weightlifting, and nothing too different than I was already doing. But I think I have a better understanding now of how tired they are and
Mm.
how fatiguing it is. Just simple things for them are extra fatiguing. So it is really good to take it super duper slow, and every little movement is a huge win. And that's probably the major difference. But yeah, now it is extra super helpful to understand what the coning and doming feels like and when you are supposed to stop doing certain core exercises because the lines are kind of gray. And I have a
Mm.
much better understanding just from personal experience now because of it.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's sort of helped you program and how and what to look out for in each sort of client that you have?
Oh yeah, it's helpful even just talking to them and they can describe what they're feeling, and now I know exactly, okay, now because you feel
Mm.
that way, we're going to switch over to this exercise. We're going to now start subbing. If they say they start feeling their stomach when they hinge, even if it doesn't look like it's hidden, I know what they mean by that, and we're going to move to our sumo stance now and continue that the rest of the pregnancy.
Oh, so you adapt the lifts itself, so they'll still go through the same movement patterns but different exercises. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
ah?
So
I
there's a
see.
progression and modification for almost everything. So I do keep it. We do everything we can until we can't anymore, and then we just
Mm.
modify it down essentially.
So it's essentially checking in what stage they're at and then regressing or progressing an exercise to best suit that movement style for them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Nice. What's the one thing that you learned during your course that you're like, this is actually horseshit? And
Oh,
we,
that's interesting. I don't, I wouldn't say anything was completely false. Like I understood where everything was coming from. I don't think there was anything that was totally off. Yeah, no, I think
yeah,
everything
yeah.
I can because it's so drastically different for every woman too.
Mhm.
It's like it could be
That's
right
what I
in
was
some
getting at.
scenarios, and some scenarios it's totally false. You just got to see it's person to person.
Yeah, 100%. Like I mentioned my research site to you, and it's so hard to talk about the menstrual cycle with one female program for one female, where then you go to a different female and everything's completely different.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they could be fatigued during, like one female could be extremely fatigued during their menstrual cycle. The other one could be extremely energetic and have all the strength and power
Hmm.
during their menstrual cycle. So it varies so much that you're just kind of like, okay, let me just again talk to people.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, for sure.
What's the sort of biggest takeaway that you've had going through this journey of like D1 athlete, got issues, pregnancy, and now coming out of like now coaching people in all these different elements?
I think the number one insight is that no matter what stage you're at, find movement and find what works for you. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I can't work out right now for such and such reason. But wherever you're at, you're going to be able to move in some way, shape, or form. Even if that is just walking, like let's say you're newly postpartum and your child keeps you up all night, you're just absolutely exhausted, you're getting 3 hours of sleep a night. There's still a plan you can make, like, okay, I'm going to walk 3 days a week around the block and keep some movement in your life.
Mm.
I just think it's so universally important for everybody um, to be functional. And I think a lot of people end up waiting and waiting, and it turns into years and decades, and you just lose that movement completely.
What was it like for you, sort of being fed up and tired of sport, then retraining that to walk on? Because I know sometimes for athletes, myself included, after I stopped playing, I had this like huge depression because like I was used to training this much and at this intensities, and then when I stopped, I was just like, what do I do with my life now? How was
Yeah,
that process for you, and what were your sort of processes in that?
it was sad because I loved soccer. I'm somebody who actually doesn't like the pressure. I like putting pressure on myself. I still am
Mm,
doing like OCR races and all that stuff, but I think the external pressure from other people was too much for me. So at first, it was a huge relief. I was just happy to be rid of it. But I think because I was younger and didn't really ever have routine movement in my life, I did just start getting depressed, and not depressed, but not necessarily understanding why I feel less energy,
mm,
more drained. I'm just lying on the couch all day, every day, eating whatever I want, hanging out with friends. So I think like that end of junior year, going into my senior year, I did just get like slower and uh, huffing and puffing upstairs. And it was very subconscious for me, but not until I went through that training process on my own going into college did I realize, oh, I feel so much better and fit. And I didn't even realize how bad I felt before and how little energy I had.
yeah, I agree. Like, so I stopped due to shoulder injury, um, and like I couldn't. Well, the doctor said I couldn't train, so I just took his word for it because he was a doctor. Um, that turned out to be bullshit, but we move. Um, so like I just like again, I was exactly like you. I just like on the couch, just doing nothing, gained a ton of weight, which was class. But then again, going back now, I was like, if I kept training, And this is a little bit of regret. Like if I had kept training at least something and just doing like different body parts, I could have just like still kept ticking over. So for me, it was like now if I see an athlete having to stop for whatever reason, or even in my coaching now, I always say, look, you might have heard this, but let's do something else. Let's train something else because you can still keep going. And it
Oh,
teaches them that no matter what situation is going on, there's still something you can do.
oh yeah, no, for sure. I think yeah, it is even I think mentally helpful for people more than
Hmm.
anything to know I'm still progressing in one area or I can focus in on something else or have a new goal rather than just feeling like your life and progress is stagnant.
100%. What is your PR song?
My PR song?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate when people ask me about music because I have such bad taste in music. It's a good question. Let me see. Let me look up. Let me see my
Yeah,
Spotify.
you're good. I love
Um,
asking this question because like different coaches have such different sort of ranges of music
oh,
style.
I
I
think
think it was Venga Boys. I had someone say Venga Boys. I was like, no, this is not acceptable.
I think I would say like Heads Will Roll has been my favorite. I don't know if you know that
Okay.
song from since
No.
like high school soccer. It was my and it's still in my workout playlist. It's just
Nice.
been my go-to. But no, you don't want to ask me about music. I put on music the other day when I was in the gym all alone. I put it over the speakers, and then all these people started coming in, and everybody was like, "Where? Who put this on? What's going on?" I, I kept my head real low.
Nice.
I was like, "Yeah, this is crap. Who did this?"
She's on the Bluetooth, Josie.
It was awful. I like went and changed the playlist to somebody else's before I left, so no one figured out.
Nice. Keep it discreet.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
If what advice would you give someone wanting to come into this industry and start coaching and sort of teaching all these different movements to general population or athletes?
Yeah, so someone who wants to become a trainer in the future.
Mm,
I would say that the biggest thing is just getting experience. I'd say shadow other trainers and for free. Just say, I want to gain experience. Can I just follow you around and see what you do? I think that's the best thing you can do because you'll learn so much just from watching and learning and not even doing anything.
mhm.
That's what I did when I first wanted to become a trainer, and I wish I did it more. I was thrown into it very quickly, but I think you can gain so much from just finding a good trainer and watching and listening how they work with their clients and what problems those clients have and how they interact.
100%. You said something very interesting there, and it's for free. A lot of people don't realize how much free work you have to do to sort of get these top level experiences and sort of coach with some of the best coaches. Can you talk about your thought behind working for free and what that sort of made you feel during the whole process?
Oh yeah, I mean I think a lot of people think they're on a high pedestal. They don't like giving out their time for free, but I ended up, it was something I knew I really wanted to do. And I was like, I'll do this no matter what. And I think it's good to humble yourself and go into it saying,
Mm,
I want to gain here. I'm the one gaining from learning from you. I don't want anything in return. So, and it was definitely, yeah, priceless for me to gain all that experience at the time.
100%. I always say it's an investment. You're not working for free, you're investing your time into your future. And like when I was at UW, I worked for free. I wasn't getting paid to be there, but and I paid to be there. But the experience and knowledge that I gained from it has helped me times more than any paid work would have probably gave me.
For sure. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. If you could just let everyone know where they can find you and um just how they can find you and contact you.
Yeah. So you can find me at Jevity Fit on Instagram. Jevity is spelled Jevity fit, FIT. I have a website as well called athleticlongevity.com. And uh, my email's on there and everything. Feel free to email me, message me through my site, DM me on Instagram. I'll be there no matter what.
Perfect. I'll link everything below. Thank you so much
Awesome.
for coming on, and
Thank you. Appreciate it.
it was a pleasure having you.
Yeah. Thanks. Have a good one.
Peace.